Hey guys, welcome back. Yesterday, you read the first part of lesson 2, and just a quick recap. Hopefully, you should have already read this, and you did the assignment in Edulastic. I know some of you said there was a little bit of confusion with some of your answers, but Harriet Tubman, she is known as um, one of the most famous conductors on the Underground Railroad. And I know that last year in 4th grade you talked about her, and she might not have been a big focal point in our book, but that's someone that you've studied before, and so that's why I selected her as being the conductor. Okay, so just a little bit of review. On page 298, you had some pictures of some abolitionists. We had the Grimke sisters, and then also Harriet Beecher Stowe. She wrote the book Uncle Tom's Cabin. And in our textbook, it kind of mentioned how that sort of changed some people's minds because their idea of slavery was that it was just people helping, working on the farms or doing things. They didn't really understand how negative it was, that there was whippings, and that it was just such a bad situation. And so her writing that book and releasing that to the public really helped open some people's eyes. And there were a lot of people who became abolitionists after reading that. um, we also saw a picture and read a little bit about Frederick Douglass. He spoke out about slavery, and he was a very prominent public figure as well. And then on the next page, on page 300, just read a little bit about the Underground Railroad, passengers and conductors. And we didn't go too far into this. I know last year in 4th grade with Indiana history, you studied this a little bit. You talked about Catherine and Levi Coffin. They were Quakers and they were abolitionists in Indiana. There's a really neat museum in Cincinnati. I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head. It's like the Freedom Museum, something like that. But it's Cincinnati is situated on the Ohio River, and the Ohio River was kind of that border to get to freedom. And so there's a lot of great information. It's really neat if you're ever in Cincinnati with your family, whether it's to go to the aquarium, which is in Newport, or to go to a baseball game. Check out that museum. It's really neat. And then, so on page 300, it was just information about that. On the next page, looking at the Compromise of 1850, and kind of seeing how California wanted to join the Union, and they didn't want to disrupt the equal amounts of slave and free states. And then the next 2 pages were all about the Nebraska-Kansas Act, and then what became to be known as Bleeding Kansas. And so what they did is they had 2 new territories, Kansas and Nebraska, and because they wanted to keep things equal, but they also wanted popular sovereignty. And what that means is it's popular vote. So whichever side wins, that would be whether it would be free or slave. And so we read about how a lot of people moved to Kansas. There were abolitionists who moved, and there were also slave owners or people who were just for slavery. Maybe they didn't own many slaves themselves, or they might not have had any, but they felt strongly about the fact that people should be allowed to own slaves. And so there were a lot of fights that broke out. And so this kind of became this nickname because there were so many issues happening. During this whole time period, there was a new political party that came about. And one of our most remembered and probably most loved presidents for some people, Abraham Lincoln. Okay. I think some people feel that the Republican Party has been around since our nation was founded, and that's not the case. Um, so Abraham Lincoln was our 16th president, and he joined this new political party. So the Republican Party is fairly new, but Lincoln joined the party, and we kind of read about that. All right, so today you're starting on page 304. Okay, so it's a little bit less reading today, but you've got this video, and there's also going to be a quiz that you're going to take. I hope you guys have been having fun with those, a little bit of friendly competition. And as always, you get to use your book. Okay, so any assignment, whether like the compare and contrast chart, or if it's a quiz, any activity, you are more than welcome to use your book to help you with that, except for your states and capitals test. Okay, you can't use your book for that. All right, so today, um, like I said, you're reading the second part of this lesson, and the title of the first part on page 304 is A Nation Divided, and this is where we start to see the beginnings of the Civil War. Okay, where the war hasn't started yet, but we're starting to see that tension between states. And so, Dred Scott, you heard about him. Maybe you've heard of Dred Scott, maybe you haven't. Okay, but his family moved. Okay, the family who had owned him, they moved, and so he felt that because they moved into an area that was free, well, he should have been free as well. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court, he lost his case in the Supreme Court, and they had this belief that slaves could be bought and sold just like anything else, which we know should not ever be the case. But that was the mindset back then, that a person who was a slave could be bought and sold just like cloth or any material that you might get at the store. It's very unfortunate, this mindset that they had. And so that was another decision that kind of frustrated people, and we start to see more and more frustration. Okay, on the next page, page 305, Lincoln versus Douglas. Okay, and so these were two candidates who were running for Senate in Illinois. And so you might not remember Douglas. You might be like, oh, I've kind of heard of that, but I definitely know who Abraham Lincoln was. And it probably was beneficial that Lincoln did not win the Senate, because he was able to then pursue being president, and also his name got out there. A lot of people really listened to what he said. They agreed with his thoughts. And so that kind of gave him the energy, the momentum that he needed to run for president. But I do want you to read through that page and make sure, answer those two questions, the fact and opinion. Like, what is a fact about the Lincoln Douglas campaign, and what is an opinion? Because there were a lot of different opinions that were out there. Okay, the last page of text is 306 and the edge of war. Okay, so we know already that the Civil War is going to happen, that this is the title of the unit. Okay, but we're not there yet in our book. We're not to war. Okay, but this is where we start to see more and more tension. Now, if you remember, yesterday you read about Bleeding Kansas. Okay, and there was a gentleman, John Brown, who moved to Kansas, who was involved in a lot of that, and he was an abolitionist. Okay, he felt strongly about African Americans having freedom, and there should not be slavery. And so he wanted slaves to revolt, to go up against their slave owners, and he thought they would. And so he raided an area where they had lots of weapons, and he had a few people with him, with the slaves. And I'm sure, like, you can probably like think that you would feel that they were too scared. They were so worried about what might happen if they were caught, which honestly I probably would have been too. Okay, so they were nervous, and there weren't any that went and joined him. And so he ended up being tried for treason. He was found guilty, and he was eventually hanged. Okay, and so all of these things that are happening are just building up to the Civil War. On the last page of this lesson, page 307, you can see the line from free and slave states. The big difference is out west. Okay, so Oregon and California, they're not really north or south, they're out west, but they are free states. Okay, and then in the middle, we've got all of these territories. Remember, we've got Indian territory, land that's just not settled yet. Okay, and so whenever we get to the Civil War, we're going to see that most of our battles took place on the eastern part of the nation, because California and Oregon, they were free, and there weren't any slave states near them. Okay, all right, so make sure that you read this lesson. Okay, if you didn't read yesterday, you need to get to it. All right, make sure you're reading. And then I know a lot of you have taken the assignment, you've gone through that, you've worked on your assignment in Edulastic. I have reassigned it to some of you because I know you can do better, and maybe you didn't realize you could use your book. So check in Edulastic if that has been reassigned to you, make sure you redo it. Okay, and then there is a quizzes today. So after watching this, you can go ahead and hop on to quizzes, and I hope you have fun with that. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.